Welcome to my channel. Do you remember a guy named Kyle Rittenhouse? Do you remember the story about what went on in Kenosha, Wisconsin? Well, Tucker Carlson recently interviewed Kyle, and he had some interesting things to say. I'll put the link in the description below, but I thought you would want to hear some of this because he makes some claims that I've never heard before.
Rittenhouse story is one of the most important and significant in recent memory. It was only a little over 3 years ago. It was in August of 2020 in Kenosha, Wisconsin, an industrial town in that state. And riots had broken out after the death of George Floyd. And at the time, a lot of people imagined these were a direct response to George Floyd's murder. But of course they weren't. The entire thing was orchestrated, and the people you saw rioting were in fact militia working on behalf of the Democratic Party.
I've never heard that claim made before. That's interesting. I wonder if he can back that up with evidence. Because although, I think we've all suspected that the left was funding those things and encouraging them. It was obvious they were encouraging them. I don't know if anyone has made a direct connection to that. So it's interesting that Tucker makes that claim.
With funding from some of the richest people in the United States. The whole thing had a political purpose, and of course that was achieved in the end, beating Donald Trump or getting him out of office. But at the time, in the middle of that chaos, almost nobody, and that would include the local police department, stood up to defend the town of Kenosha. And so that job was left to, among just a few others, a teenager called Kyle Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse showed up in Kenosha that night in August to defend a car lot that its owner thought would be burned. So Rittenhouse showed up with nobody else, with a rifle to defend this lot. During that riot, several people tried to murder Kyle Rittenhouse, including a recently released mental patient who had a history of raping children, who tried to seize Kyle Rittenhouse's rifle and kill him with it. He was not the only one who tried to do that. Kyle Rittenhouse defended himself with force and survived. For doing that, he was charged with murder. He went on trial and was ultimately acquitted. But in the process, we really saw who's on which side. People who looked to Kyle Rittenhouse and said, obviously you're on the right side. You're trying to defend the town of Kenosha against rioters and then your own life against murderers. And those who saw Kyle Rittenhouse as a threat to their plans to acquire more power, because Kyle Rittenhouse exercised the most basic right of all, and that's the right of self-defense. Well, it's hard to believe, but Kyle Rittenhouse today is only 20 years old. That's how young he was when that happened. He's had a remarkable life, and he's written about it in a new book called Acquitted, and we're honored to have him here on the set. Kyle Rittenhouse.
Thank you for having me,
us.
Tucker.
It's incredible that that was only a little over 3 years ago. You were 17 years old at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long journey. A lot of life lessons learned. I'm still learning life lessons, but going through that trial, spending time in jail, and just having the trajectory of my life change from wanting to be a firefighter, EMT, or a police officer to becoming this person of having to defend myself and being thrust into the national spotlight, being used on political campaigns such as Joe Biden's campaign where he called me a white supremacist, and just having my face plastered everywhere, calling me a white supremacist, a racist, a vigilante, and just smearing my name.
It's and I mean, there's so much to ask you, but it's interesting. I saw an interview you did the other day with someone I actually like and know well. But the framing of your story was really striking to me. This person has effectively demanded that you apologize for not being killed in Kenosha. The idea is that you had no right to defend yourself, and you should have been murdered by the child molester or the apparent Satanist who went after you later with a gun. Like, you should have submitted to that.
And isn't that really what, in the final analysis, isn't that really what people who want to take your guns away are saying? You should not have the right to defend yourself. You should simply submit. How many police departments have you heard say, if someone comes to rob you, just give them what they want. Your life is not worth it. Well, nowadays, if you give them what they want, they'll still shoot you. But you're not supposed to defend yourself. That's not your job. That's the job of the police, who, of course, are never there when trouble comes. They come after to clean up the mess. But it's a twisted, weird world that we live in.
Is that a little bit weird to have people say to your face, I'm sorry that you weren't murdered, and how dare you defend yourself?
It is very weird. It makes me very uncomfortable. I think I know what you're talking about, and some of the questions he asked me, I personally think they were out of line questions, because I don't think he would have asked a person who was, say, in Israel, who had to defend himself or defend his country. I don't think he would have asked him the same questions, but I don't know why he asked me.
Well, and I don't mean to single this person out. I mean, the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I think he speaks for many, and it's this, the person I'm talking about is a thoughtful, nice person, in my opinion. But those questions perhaps reflected his having not thought about it. That's kind of the view of a lot of people. Like, how dare Kyle Rittenhouse use force to defend his own life?
Absolutely. And I don't know how much of the trial he watched. I don't think he watched much, because one of the questions he asked is, why was I there with an illegal weapon? And I had to clear the record for the thousandth time, saying, no, the firearm was not illegal. The weapon was completely legal. Wisconsin law states this, and this.
But with respect, like, who gives a shit, actually? The town was being burned by animals, by militia working for, effectively, the Biden campaign. And they're hurting people and running around with guns and setting things on fire and destroying an American city. Whether your gun was, quote, legal or not, isn't that kind of the least interesting question?
Absolutely, and it doesn't take away from my right to self-defense. The gun was completely legal, but if it wasn't, it doesn't mean I can't defend myself with it.
If it was a howitzer, who cares? Like, someone needs to defend civilization against the people who would destroy it.
Absolutely, and these were the people trying to kill me that I protected myself against.
I'm not going to play the rest of it. I'll put the link in the description and you can watch it yourself. But it's an interesting interview, and Kyle has been through a lot. He really has. Now, after he was found not guilty at trial, he's being sued by one of the people that attacked him. And he's countersuing. But the fact that these people were proven to have attacked him with the intent to kill him in a court of law with videotaped evidence that they could not refute. And he'll show you a little bit of the trial where one of the attackers actually had to admit on the stand under questioning from the defense attorney that, yes, in fact, he did point a gun at Kyle and did intend to shoot him. And now they're suing him. The world is upside down. It's kittywampus. It's crazy. It's totally not the way that it should be. And I don't know what you can do about it except just keep fighting. Just keep fighting and hope that sane heads will prevail, because right now the insane are in charge of the country, and the insane are pushing insane agendas that don't benefit anyone, not even them, which is the crazy part. Except there must be some hidden motive to destroy the country for some reason that apparently they'll get rich by or something, or they think they will. But, the real force behind all of this is Satan. It's the devil trying to destroy the world, trying to destroy the faith of believers, trying to put believers in situations where they'll be hard-pressed to get out of and defend themselves. Kyle was fortunate. He had a left-wing professor, or not professor, but prosecutor who went after him for murder, even though it was obvious from the evidence that he was not guilty, that he was defending his own life. But he got off, which I think in our system, in some places, that would not be the case, because they're so twisted and they're so warped in their understanding of the law and in their understanding of the Constitution that they'll come up with the wrong verdicts simply because that's what they want. And they don't care about justice. They don't care about truth. They don't care about any of that stuff. One of my commenters said, we're in the last days, very similar to what went on with Rome before the collapse of the Roman Empire. And I believe that's true. I think we still have a chance to turn it around. But we don't have much time to do that. And we really need God's intervention to save this country. As always, I pray that you will be abundant, that you will live a long life, and that you'll be healthy, and that God will keep you safe from harm. I also pray that He will keep everyone that you love in the same condition. And I pray that you will be anxious for nothing, but in all things, through prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, you will let your requests be made known to God. And the peace that passes all understanding will keep your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. This is the Vietnam Era Vet out.